Welcome to the Protagonist Show. You can already tell it's not Joshua Duder today. Obviously, Dan Vaughn's still here, but I'm joined by the one, the only Mr. Jason Davis. Jason, welcome to the show.
Dan, I'm definitely not the only Jason Davis, but I do appreciate you trying to make me feel special. That is nice of you. I imagine you're not the only Dan Vaughn out there either, but you're also special.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not the only Dan Vaughn. You realize that whenever you're signing up for a Gmail account and realize that you're like, do you want Dan Vaughn 1436? It's like,
yeah. Such is life. Such is life.
You know, you get Dan or Jason. Those are pretty common names. It's not the worst thing in the world, I guess.
Could have changed it. Could have changed it. Never got around to it. And
you
I'm
could have
stuck
had a
with
stage
it now.
name.
Yeah, could have done it. Nope, we're here. We are who we are, Dan, which I think is fine.
I appreciate you subbing in. Joshua Duder out with a cold this week. And when Joshua Duder gets a cold, he loses his voice almost every single time. Ooh. So that's bad news in what we do. But I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule. I know you've been grinding all day today, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, Thursday's a little lighter than most days, but I don't know. People know we're on this is a Thursday. We're recording on a Thursday.
On Thursday.
Yeah, I did have some morning time to myself, which was nice. I chose not to engage too much in work. Got to run in, but of course the radio show happens every day. So I talked largely about European football, but I also talked about some MLS and various things. You know, it's a gig.
Very appropriate segue there, as our first topic of the day is a little MLS. God forbid that I talk about MLS for some of my listeners, but we'll get there. Anyway, yes, MLS sparked a bit of controversy this week as Minnesota United apparently hurt David Beckham's feelings. Last weekend, Inter Miami and the Messi Circus visited Minnesota United and ended up losing 4-1. The match tifo, which Minnesota United's fans are the Wonder Wall, I believe is what they're called. They like a good tifo, and they had a tifo, which if you're watching on the YouTube show, you'll see it. History over hype, culture over cash. Notice that hype and cash are both in Inter Miami pink. On the Twitter machine, if you're still on there, the Minnesota United actual club account referred to Inter Miami as the Pink Pony Club, which is, if you're not aware, a song by Chapel Roan that's pretty famous right now, and also end up posting a picture of the tifo, which very much irritated the chairman of Inter Miami, Mr. David Beckham, who said to show a little respect, be elegant and triumph. And then whenever he responded to the tifo, he said, class over everything. Jason, tip us in a teapot, worth talking about. I'd love to know your take on this.
Look, in my normal life, in my off-air life, Dan, I am I don't like confrontation. I'm not a big fan. I might yell at the car going a little too fast in my neighborhood. Your kids are here, that kind of stuff. I know they're not going to hear me. They're already gone. They're not. I'm not trying to pick fights with people in public over parking space. I don't like that stuff. But when it comes to my sports and my soccer, I grew up on sports talk radio. I am a child of the internet age in the sense that it came along when I was in high school. So I appreciate that this is the kind of stuff that we kind of need a little bit more of in American soccer. I think there's a line where it gets unseemly and weird and uncomfortable, and maybe it's too much. And English tabloids have proven where that line is numerous times over history. But I do think it's not a great look for David Beckham. I don't know why the man felt like he needed to get involved personally on his own account with what Minnesota said. He did bring like very serious dad energy to this and shaking wagons. You kids, you're so disrespectful these days. It's like, David, look, this is the way the internet works. Maybe it's not a great look for Minnesota United either. But I just think, Dan, that we do need this kind of stuff to keep the conversation going around American soccer, and we don't have enough of it, and we can't really get too precious and picky when it happens.
I thought the same thing. You know, I have long made fun of and I can remember specifically. This is probably 10 years ago. They're probably not still the sponsors, but Heineken Rivalry Week that
Mhm.
they put out the list of matchups, and there was like one that might have a little bit of bite to it. I think that was probably Portland and Seattle because those the one that is interesting. Of course, LA is getting there. But it's funny to me that of all people, David Beckham, who cut his teeth in the English Premier League, played all over Europe. Like that's where there's true rivalries, and the fans can be pretty brutal over there.
But this is it, Dan. This your point. You're getting to the heart of this. It's not that if a fan posts a meme or makes fun of Inter Miami, David Beckham, that's an eagle doesn't hunt flies kind of situation. In this case, it's the club. He's upset the club did this. Now, I'm going to be careful here. I don't want to give off the sense that I'm speaking ill of the dead, and I'm not. But Grant Wall was very famous during his life when we were all on the internet, we were all on Twitter, we were all engaging, all these soccer people in America. He was very famous for not having a lot of time for people who would attack other journalists or get into a fight with other soccer people. He's like, we're all in this together. We're all the same. It doesn't matter if you got a blog or you write for Sports Illustrated. We're not supposed to be picking at each other. And I imagine that that's the process, that's the thought process that David Beckham is going through, in addition to this whole, like, sportsmanship is important kind of stuff, which I believe in. I do believe in sportsmanship.
Yeah, you brought up Grant Wall, and I cannot help but share the story. I was notorious for poking at whenever I first started in all this, I would try to start arguments on. We've talked about this. I think you and I may have
We
had
have.
a bit of that in the beginning,
Right. Yeah.
and
We got drunk. It was a scene. No, we'll tell you about it later.
I wish I could blame alcohol for my bad taste in banter, but I went after Grant for something he had said, and he DM'd me, and it was mind shattering because it was like, this is Grant Wall. Like was reading this guy when I was in high school in Sports Illustrated. Like he's taken the time to call me out, and not publicly, privately.
Right.
And what you said is dead on, which was like, hey, like I know your work, which one was kind of shocking.
Right. Oh yeah, consumed everything. But that's the thing, right? He did it privately. I wanted to kind of just drive that home.
Right.
Whereas David Beckham decided to take his concerns public, which is where it gets problematic for him.
I guess my ask here is, and shout out to Grant in the memory of Grant, because great sports writer. Wish we had more like him. How performative of this is Beckham? Like here, like is he taken up for his buddy Messi or his club? Like it is his role as the chairman, but also as an ex sort of famous football player. Like, is that part of why he sort of gets a pass? Because if I could think in, of the Colts, and this is an NFL with Irsay, who will go online and say things that people are like, man, that guy needs to chill out. Like he needs to act his age,
Yeah.
Like, do we give Beckham a pass because he's an ex-player? So maybe his blood starts boiling a little quicker than some of the other owners.
Maybe. I don't know. I think David Beckham has like risen above us all on some level, and he's sort of an ethereal being at this point, not necessarily human. But he's not as you said, he's not the first manager to get a little butthurt online and say something. And American soccer's got plenty of those. Some of them don't sort of make the news because they're owning at a level where it's not a national story. But there are owners. I'm sure you know some stories, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
But Merritt Paulson is also very famous for having mixed it up online a little too much. And in those cases, it was over the line. I don't think what David Beckham did was over any line. It's just not a good. It just makes him look like a scold in an era where we don't really love a scold online. So I think he probably should have held back. He should have let it slide. He should have been like, whatever, we'll get him in the MLS Cup final or something, whatever it is. Just tell yourself that this is okay because it's kind of the way it works. It makes him seem out of touch more than anything else.
It does. Yeah, it does. But kudos to Minnesota United because they get the last laugh and they get the win 4-1. And Inter Miami is not playing at a level where currently this season where they expect themselves to be playing, certainly. But there you go. So I don't know. I guess that means Minnesota United wins that one. Topic 2, the specter of Gianni Infantino and the continued corruption of FIFA. I feel like this story, we could have been writing or talking about this story 10 years ago to be all the exact same players, exact same stuff. But if you're not aware, everyone's favorite toady was wandering around the Middle East with Donald Trump over the course of this week. Dealing with, let's talk about it. Some of the ethically questionable hosts that have gotten the World Cup recently: Russia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia is coming up. Scandal after scandal have plagued this organization basically as long as it's existed. And it's almost a universal acceptance of the corruption at this point. I will tell you that as I was filling out the notes for this podcast and talking about, like, thinking about what I was going to say, I kept finding more scandals, more issues. Just recently, UEFA came out with a statement about him showing up late because he had been messing around the Middle East with his buddy Trump. The FIFA Congress is one of the most important meetings in world football. That's where he was late to, and that's where they walked out early, where all the 211 nations of the world's game gathered to discuss issues that affect the sport right across the world. To have the timetable changed at the last minute for what appears to be simply to accommodate private political interests does the game no service and appears to put its interests second. And let's not forget all of the immigrant labor that went into building some of the stadiums of past World Cups that the FIFA entire organization has turned a blind eye to and not really accepted criticism. Just today, as we were preparing to record, I saw another quote from Infantino saying he didn't want any troublemakers showing up at the World Cup. He didn't want any troublemakers involved in football at all. Jason, I feel like when we talk about Gianni Infantino, he's the embodiment of sort of like corporate, like organizational corruption, and to the point that, like, is it just are we just going to accept this, that's the way it is?
This is the world that we live in now. Everything is out there in your face, and nobody does anything about it. Acceptance, I don't know if that's the right word. We've just become so numb to it, and you can tie this to a number of things that are happening in our society, politically, otherwise. I mean, Gianni Infantino is only doing what everybody else is doing, which is ride a wave of this absolute in your face, overload people with information, overload people with scandal, overload people with your avarice. And then, again, what does anybody do about it? He's got enough people in his pocket now. And I've talked about this before, but this is at least during the Sepp Blatter era, we knew that things were going on. We knew bags of cash were changing hands. We knew that Jack Warner and Chuck Blazer and Sepp were scheming to move money around. I actually think that Sepp was more than anything a useful idiot who, he had this very naive view of what he could do with the game, and he was kind of willing to accept the corruption. I don't know that he was always 100% party to it, but hey, if they want to trade some money, that's okay, because we're going to have a World Cup in a place that's never had a World Cup before. Good for FIFA. I'll win my Nobel Peace Prize, which he obviously never got. Whereas when he got ousted, and obviously all that corruption happened, and there were all the arrests in Zurich and everything that went on there, we're like, oh, we're going to clean up FIFA. No, all that did was clear the path for a guy like Johnny, who, as you said, is more corporate, more cunning, more scheming, more cold and calculated, willing to go glad hand with the despots and the dictators and the people that hold the power in places where they're basically, holding their people down and repressing various kinds of people. I mean, it makes it really hard to enjoy this game in any sort of pure way. I talked a lot during my initial stages doing Soccer Morning and on the radio about that duality in our brains as soccer fans that we have to carry with us if you want to care about the international game. Now, obviously, if you care about your local team and nothing else, you can kind of at least imagine there's multiple layers between you and FIFA.
Sure.
But it's still there. It's still there. It's just further removed. But if you are a fan of the U.S. men's national team or Mexico or the women's game or whatever, these people are the people that have their dirty hands in the pie of world football. And it's just like, can we not? What this is not, it takes the joy away from being a fan of the sport.
I think that's, I can remember in the last World Cup, there were some fans who said they were going to sit out watching the World Cup. And I at the time thought, man, that's a big ask. Like, it's a big ask to say, I'm going to turn away from really the sports moment of for
Yeah.
every 4 years. It's
Yeah.
such a challenge as a fan. And I would say this truthfully, is that once the whistle blows and the ball's rolled out, it's very easy to forget about
It
all of
is.
the things that have got
It
us
is.
to that point, and then we'll follow up after. And I know that that's kind of the definition of sports washing, right? Like, if
Yes.
we use the sport and the beauty of the sport to sort of, don't look behind the curtain over there, the little guy pulling the levers, because you don't want to know about that. And you brought up Sepp Blatter, and that's such a great shout, because I do remember watching, I think it's a documentary about that, about how all the people that were arrested and how much, like, the bribes that were going around. And it seems like now we're okay with it, and maybe not we're okay with it, but whoever could call a stop to this is not
Yeah.
going to.
Well, again, they're not hiding it, which I guess on some level makes it more honest, but at the same time makes it worse, right? Because now you cannot pretend, you cannot be oblivious, you cannot, cover your head with the blanket and go, oh, la 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 la, nothing's going on here that's going to help, that's going to affect my love of this game or my enjoyment of a World Cup or whatever that is. I mean, you referenced the, and maybe this is like a small thing, and I don't know exactly what comes of it, but you mentioned the delegates walking out because Johnny was too busy in the Middle East to show up on time for the FIFA Congress, which is like the biggest thing that they do, right? And the statement that you read comes from UEFA, right? And watching UEFA fight with FIFA, or UEFA fight with Johnny, is like watching, trying to decide who you're going to root for, Skeletor or Megatron. Like, there's no winning here. These are both bad people. I mean, in this sense, bad organizations. Johnny bad. I mean, you can either, and this is the choice. You can either say, I'm going to have to make my peace with it. I'll have to live two brains as a soccer fan. I'm going to have to be in denial about this sometimes, or I stop being a fan. Those are your options, because their fingers touch everything. And that includes our domestic game, and includes the lowest levels, because ultimately everything flows down to, again, it's got to be connected. You got to be registered, all this stuff. And then it just gets really hard to kind of make your peace with it. And we're doing a soccer show, and you're boosting up soccer in America, and I'm trying to do the same thing.
Guilty.
And at the same time, we're telling people like, oh man, I feel so terrible doing this thing sometimes, because you feel on some level as if you're propping them up by doing this work.
I'm sure they're not watching the show. That's okay. But maybe it comes up on his timeline. Who knows? I was also struck, and I don't need to dig too deep into the politics, but I was struck by the video that I played earlier of, I believe it was one of the leaders of the Saudi Arabian government, and then Trump and Gianni Infantino, and just thinking, like, are we the bad guys now? Like, it's hard to
Oh dear, Dan.
accept
Oh
this.
dear.
And we
Oh
joke a
dear.
lot. I've always talked about how I enjoy the subtext of international soccer when there's more than just the 90 minutes that you're going to play at hand. If it's England playing Argentina, or if it's the United States playing a list of countries.
You need the history to be a long time ago and non-threatening is what you need, right?
Right.
You need, and obviously, the Falklands, or whatever the Argentines call it. They don't call it the Falklands. Don't tell an Argentinian it's called the Falklands. But that's all that, for us, it's long enough. But yeah, certainly, like, oh, it's so interesting when England plays Germany. Why is it interesting? Let's get into that. What's interesting about it? What do you think? Are they going to sing the German bomber song again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is complicated, but we don't want to live it. And we certainly don't want to live it when a lot of it seems to be flowing again from, from the politics, from the cultural moment, from the people making decisions. And then again, because Johnny Infantino is just so baldly chasing power and money and doesn't care. He does not care who you are. If you can help him make money for FIFA, if you can give him access to power, he loves that. He loves being in the box with the king of Saudi Arabia. He loves glad handing Trump in the Oval Office and giving him the Club World Cup trophy that Trump leaves on his desk for like 3 weeks because it's super gold and glittery. I mean, Johnny's living his dream. I mean, he has clinged, is that the word? He's attached himself to power in a way that is so over the top that I don't even think you could write a character like that in a movie and sell it, because it'd be like, no, there's no way somebody's like that exactly.
I always think back to the footage, and I am no way making a direct comparison, but to Adolf Hitler at the Olympics and all of the political things going on. And in your mind, you're like, boy, why would they have even put the Olympics there? But here we are.
Here
World,
we
Cup
are.
2026.
Leave it there, Dan. Leave it there. Leave it there.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about Mexican soccer. The Liga MX Femenil crowned the Clausura champions Pachuca. If you're not familiar with how Liga MX works, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Basically, they split their season in two. You can win either the first championship or the second championship. In this case, Pachuca wins the Clausura, which is, I believe, the second half of the season. They won the title 3-2 on aggregate. They played against Club America, which were the runners-up for the fourth time. Pachuca was led by striker Charlyn Corral, and if I mispronounced that, Charlyn, I apologize. She scored a brace in the win, but I love this quote from her because it reminds me a bit of how Ricky Henderson used to talk about himself. She said, when I chose Pachuca, I didn't take the easy route. Everyone thought I'd go to those who had already been champions, but that's not Charlyn. Charlyn always wants to be different, to make a difference no matter what it takes. And when I made the decision to come to Pachuca, it was for that, to be a champion. I told the presidents, everything that takes time to get there is more enjoyable. I feel fulfilled, happy, and very satisfied that I didn't take the easy route and that I helped Pachuca achieve its first title. Now, one of my favorite things about Liga MX Femenil is the just excitement among the fan bases showing up for these matches in ways that they just don't do in the United States yet. Maybe that'll happen eventually, but I will say that when you watch a Liga MX Femenil match, like, there are people in the stands and they care about their clubs. I am really pumped about this, and I'm excited for it because it feels like anytime there's a challenger to the NWSL, and I'm not in any way attacking the NWSL, but I'm saying it only, to me, makes the landscape even better. The rise of European leagues, it makes the league better because it challenges them to live up to the expectations of the players who are getting to choose where they play. And in this case, Charlyn Corral, who scored those 2 goals in the final, came from Europe. She had played in Europe for a while and came back to Mexico to play for Pachuca and win a championship. I absolutely love this stuff, man. And again, I love people that speak in the third person, you know?
Oh, yeah. When's the last time we had a good athlete speaking in the third person? Shout out to Charlyn Corral. I didn't know about that quote. I love it now. It's my favorite thing. Favorite thing of the week. Certainly, Dan. Thank you for bringing it to me. I'll admit that I'm not up to speed on where Liga MX Femenil is. I know it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some incredible goals via the way we all consume a lot of things we don't watch actively, and that is through social media. I know that stuff is happening. I am fascinated by the cultural element of it, and not claiming to be an expert on Mexico in particular, or even Latino culture in general. But I think people have this general sense that Latino cultures, and Mexico would be one of these, is very sexist. I don't know what the right word is.
Machismo. I mean, that's a word that's used, right?
Machismo is a thing. I talk about it with my wife about, and I know you've had these conversations too. Machismo kind of becomes something that you would imagine, or in this case, you would imagine machismo would keep people from paying attention to the women's league or caring about the women's league. But I think, I would assume what's happening here, and this was my best guess, having just heard about this championship for Pachuca and everything else, is it kind of doesn't matter when they're wearing your colors, right? And that's really interesting in relief to what NWSL has become and chosen to do, right. And it's having success and it's doing stuff. And then, of course, you look at the Super League in England, and you see, okay, there's a Chelsea and there's a United and there's all these clubs that are attached to men's teams, and how are they treated? First of all, obviously a big part of this, and then how do fans respond? And we sit there, and it's very easy, I think, for those of us who are in maybe Anglo cultures, or however you want to just delineate here, to go, oh, the Mexicans, they're they have machismo, they're not fair to women, they don't treat women like equals, whatever. Meanwhile, it's the bloke in the pub in London saying, I'll never watch a Chelsea women's game.
Right.
You'll never catch me out there. I'm building a bit of a straw man. I acknowledge that. But I'm kind of fascinated by maybe there's a breakthrough thing in that sense that, like, we have a club. Why would we not support everything that club does?
I mean, Jason, if you look, there are clubs. I mean, FC Barcelona has a famous
Yes.
basketball team.
Yes.
Like
yes.
they have,
Yeah.
it's a club in the sense of it's bigger than just a single soccer team. Like it goes, it goes all the way into their youth program, all the way up, and then into other sports. I think there's a swimming team, if I remember correctly, for FC Barcelona as well. So I'm just saying that, like, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that you root for the badge. And if the badge is on a player's chest, it doesn't matter if they're a man, woman, child. I'm going to root for them because that's the club culture. And I think it's awesome to see. I think it's something that you rightly point out. Why don't we do that in the United States? That's interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's a hope to sell more jerseys.
And again, I'm not gonna claim to be a sociologist. Okay, I'm not gonna claim to have degrees and have researched this. But just my sense is that there has always been a streak of we need to do it ourselves. Right. And it kind of feels like you're leading into the patriarchy if you're saying, oh, let's just attach our team to the men's team and we'll be called the same thing. I think, there are sometimes in college sports where, that kind of, we've got a men's team and a women's team. I mean, I remember, I don't know why this is coming to me. I think it's Louisiana Tech. I don't even know where they're located. Louisiana Tech. They were the Lady Texters. I remember they had a decent basketball team back in the 90s. They were the Lady Texters. And it's like, why are they going to be the Lady Texters? Like, why is that important? And I think so as women's sports, which obviously got a head start here in America, thanks to Title IX and a lot of things, it kind of became like, okay, if we're going to do this professional thing, well, we want our own clubs. Like, we don't want to have to share. We don't want to have to lean on the men. We don't want our fans to feel like, well, we're just grabbing what the men will give us, eating their scraps and putting together a soccer team. I mean, the WNBA is another example of this. While those teams can be attached sometimes, they've all got their own identities. They've all chosen to be different than the men's team in town. And in soccer, because of what you described, like what happens in Barcelona with multiple sports teams, and because soccer has this, I guess, grassroots organic club growth history, we go, well, we can have a men's team at Chelsea and a women's team, and they'll just be the same team under the same umbrella. I don't know. Major League Soccer teams weren't even ready for that for the most part. And then you get stuff like the Thorn situation and the ownership and some of the things that happened there. And you're like, we don't want that. We don't want the women's team to be attached to the men's team because they don't treat us well or because the people in charge don't know how to deal with it. So I don't think there's a perfect recipe, but I think it's okay to like watch what's Liga MX Femenil is doing and say, okay, well, maybe there's a model there for them to grow it.
Interesting stuff. The differences in culture are always striking, and sometimes they're more subtle than we even recognize on face value.
For sure.
Interesting stuff. Well, Jason, we've covered our topics. It's time to make some viewing recommendations, what we're watching this weekend, and I'll kick it off with the USL Super League. If you follow me on social medias, I'm always talking about the Super League. I am a big fan of the Super League, the USL Super League, not to be confused with anything in England. But the Carolina Ascent are number one in the league and are trying to finish off a drive towards home field advantage of the playoffs. They've got Tampa Bay Sun this weekend, the 17th. All the Super League matches are on Peacock. You can catch them there. It's crazy because Tampa Bay has sort of subtly crept in and now is second place and just a couple of points back behind Carolina Ascent. If this goes badly for Carolina Ascent, there's a chance that Tampa Bay might jump them before the end of the season, which would be absolutely wild. But on the other hand, Tampa Bay needs these points because they're holding for a home playoff match, and Spokane Zephyr are right behind them, winning match after match. I love the Super League. I cannot wait to catch this match. And like I said, I'm a big fan of all the soccer going on in this league. It's good stuff. Been following it all season. Been podcasting about it like crazy.
That's incredible. Now this is the Protagonist show, and I feel like I would be I would be turning my back on the spirit of the show if I went like, oh, watch this MLS game
Jason,
that is
you're a
interesting.
guest in the show. You have every right to recommend the show that you want to watch.
I understand. I do understand. I appreciate that. You're passing. You're giving me free reign here. Okay, then I will do that. I will do MLS. While I am certainly a fan of some other leagues in this country, I appreciate what MLS has become in terms of driving a national conversation. And yeah, could there be more success on that front? Absolutely. But in Columbus on Saturday, Columbus Crew, FC Cincinnati, this has become one of the best rivalries in American soccer pretty quickly because Cincinnati hasn't been around that long. Obviously, Cincinnati has a bit of a lower division history in addition to what they've done in Major League Soccer. These teams built stadiums in recent years, which I think is very important to establishing these teams, not just as, oh, there's a soccer team in town, but it's our soccer team. I can see the building they play in. And Hell is Real is just the coolest name for a rivalry that you could possibly think of. I mean, it's because of this billboard between the two cities that, is obviously meant to help you find your Lord and Savior if you're so inclined. And I love those little quirks, those little local things that make a rivalry stand out. And even though I have no rooting interest in this game, I'm neither a Columbus Crew fan nor an FC Cincinnati fan, I can appreciate that these two teams and these two cities really do have a latent hostility that we need to see on the field. I think, Dan, you referenced earlier, MLS has a rivalry week. They used to call it Heineken Rivalry Week, what were they selling? Well, really all they had was Cascadia. We've got this in addition to Cascadia, and I'm like pretty excited to see what they what they do. And these are both good teams. We're not talking about just the rivalry being a selling point. They're both challengers for an MLS Cup title this season.
I'm not an MLS fan, but I'll tell you this. I loved what FC Cincinnati brought when they played in the championship, and it's exciting to see that grow. I used to live in Cincinnati when I was a teenager, so
okay.
long time
right.
before
Yeah.
they ever played. So, but yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I'm all for that. And Columbus Crew, these are the originals. No, I'm all for this. No.
They are.
I may not be a fan of MLS, but I like both of those clubs. I'll be honest and say that.
Okay, I'm good. I'm glad. I'm glad I wasn't required to pick a game in the I just found out that the local team is playing. They got a UPSL schedule and an NPSL schedule. I can barely keep up, but go ahead, Dan.
They're a club. See, they've got teams in multiple leagues. I'm all for it. Well, now that we've reached the point where it's time for me to rant and go off topic, boy, I got a dark one for you. So why not? Let's do this thing. Sometimes I think that soccer is too trivial to be covering when there's all kinds of horrible things happening in the world. But I'll tell you the story of Eddie Hamill. Eddie Hamill was American that played for Ajax in the 1920s. He was the first American to play over there, played all throughout the 20s, then became a coach, then got picked up by the Nazis because he was an American Jew and was sent to Auschwitz where he died. Soccer can still be beautiful in a terrible world. Let's enjoy it regardless.
That was well done. That was well done. I thought you might run out of time, but you nailed it, Dan. You are practiced.
It was a close call. I have watched Josh really struggle with this. Do you feel up for this right now?
I mean, I have to have something I can talk about in 30 seconds and make a point and go off topic. Sure. Let's, I think this might actually be technically kind of in the middle of, I'm thinking my brain goes soccer first, Dan. And I'm like, oh, is this on topic? Is this off topic? What are we doing? No, I will give you something. Give me the clock. Give me the clock. American soccer fans, please do me a favor. Stop sniping at each other. Stop fighting one another. Stop going after each other on social media because you like MLS and they like USL, or you like USL and they like MLS, and their league's not real and yours is totally organic and legit. Nobody is doing it perfect in this country. We're all trying to figure out it all as we go. We are trying to build something that has never been built before. And it'd be nice if we could all just get together every now and then and be friends. Thank you very much.
Be friends indeed. Jason Davis, you crushed it, man. I can feel you stretching at the end, but you did a great job.
I feel a little bit like Mr. Rogers of soccer right now. I'm not going to lie, Dan. That was that was a little bit too PBS after school. But you do what you can, I
Well,
guess.
you are forgiven, sir. I'm always down for someone to bring some positivity. Jason, for those people that are looking for your work, because it's great work, where would they find it?
I appreciate that, Dan. Yeah, there's probably too much. I'm not going to deny that. The radio show that's afternoons on Sirius XM FC. If you have Sirius XM or you rent a car, please check it out. There's also an app, so it's not like you have to be in a car. You can carry it around and listen to us. It's me and Eric Ronaldo in the afternoons from 4 to 7 Eastern time. Sometimes it gets a little adjusted with games and happening and those kind of things. I am doing a 3 times a week show called Morning Kick Around at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. Please support it. It's still growing. It's still young. It's still not necessarily as well known as I would like it to be. It's a grind, as Dan and I talk about often, and we've had some really good guests. We just talked about the story out of Nashville about La Brigada de Oro that boycotted their pregame festivities because of all of the ICE raids and the immigration things happening in their community, and absolutely support them. So go look for that video. And coming up very soon, probably by the time you listen to this or watch this, Hercules Gomez will have been on the show to talk about Inter Miami kind of becoming the heels of American soccer, which I'm very fascinated by. David Beckham not helping that cause too much. And then I've been doing this longer than anything else. It's the best soccer show. It's the thing I carry with me in my heart when I think about what I've done in soccer. It's me and Jared Dubois. It's more casual. It's a hangout. But we talk about the U.S. men's national team. We'll sprinkle in some MLS. This week, we talked about the new kits that U.S. Soccer dropped and gave our opinions on those. So find that on a podcast platform or on YouTube, The Best Soccer Show.
Excellent work. Yeah, I saw your conversation about the Nashville situation, and I thought it was well done overall. Yeah, Jason's must see. If you're not watching, listening, you need to. He's got his finger on the pulse. I will say, if you love this show or anything else that we're producing on Protagonist Soccer, please check out our Patreon. I realize that there's lots of people asking for your money, and whatever you are able to give us, we appreciate. And if you can't, that's okay too. But patreon.com/Protagonist Soccer, it's a way to actively support us in our creative all the things that we do get paid through that.
Can I say something, Dan? Because I've been thinking about this a lot with Morning Kick Around, because we also are, hey, throw us a couple bucks if you can, become a member, that kind. And the Best Soccer Show has a Patreon. More than anything, more than giving me money, and I don't know how you feel, Dan, I imagine you might be in this, just tell somebody.
Sure.
Share the show, because that is probably worth as much as the $3 or $5 you might give somebody to support them in a given month. The more people who know about Protagonist Soccer, the better American soccer will be. I really believe that. So again, if you don't have any money to throw Dan's way, just share it with somebody. Go on social media. Just a random part. I really like this conversation. I really hate Jason Davis. Get him off the show. Whatever
MLS
it is, doesn't matter.
I was gonna say, tell your rich friends, maybe they can give me some money.
There you go. That's what you do. If you have a billionaire in your phone, just hit him up.
If you have a billionaire in your phone, we probably should be friends.
That's actually true. Billionaires.
That's it for the Protagonist Show. Jason Davis, thank you for coming on the show. We'll be back next week. Should be with Joshua Duder. Hopefully his voice is back. But thank you so much for watching/listening. We appreciate your support. Have a good one.